Okay, I think we're ready. Ready?
Ready.
No. Webinar is now streaming. We ready, Frank? Because I still see the.
Yep.
Okay, great, thanks. Welcome everyone to the first official meeting of the Historic Review Commission. I'll kick things off since we've not officially appointed any of our leadership, but we will do that today, which will be job number one, well, technically job number one once we take roll call. And so I see on the screen or in my room that Craig Pepper has been able to join us. So welcome, Craig. You weren't
Thank you.
at the meet and greet, but you're here. Dave Brennan is here. Mark Tannenbaum was our A student and arrived first, I think. Melinda Meyer is here. Jeff Zialonis. And then ex officio members is Jason Wazorek from representing our planning commission and the big city of Erie, and myself as the planning director. Fantastic. We'll go right into, we have no approval for minutes because we've not had an official meeting. So I will try to be a studious note taker and transcribe our work today into our official first minutes. So we'll pass over that. And then go straight into new business since everything is new. Our first order of business is electing 3 members as our leadership team. One will be chair, vice chair, and secretary. I'm a little rusty in my Robert's Rules of Order, so if I don't get the terminology correct, please excuse me. But is there anyone who would like to nominate someone to be chair?
I would nominate Dave.
Jeff nominates Dave Brennan. Dave?
Actually, I cannot, because I'm still a member of council. Isn't that correct, Kathy? So I can't do anything till I leave. I'm not an actually official member. How do we deal with that?
That's a good point, Dave. You're right. So until he cannot take official action until he's no longer a city council person, which won't be until January. There is one might think you could be the chair, but not be able to act as the chair until January, but maybe we won't do that since we'd have to elect officers in January anyway. So unfortunately, Dave will have to, I think Dave, you'll have to not be a candidate for chair. So is there anyone else who would like to nominate themselves or anyone else for chair?
I'd like to nominate Jeff as chair.
No good deed goes unpunished.
I appreciate that, but being that I think you folks have a lot more, actually some have degrees in historic preservation, I think I would defer to you guys, at least initially.
Jeff declines the nomination. Is there another nomination?
How about Melinda? I think she's also involved in the historic preservation more than anybody.
Melinda, do you accept the nomination by Jeff? Would you like to be a candidate?
Sure. We're going to run out of people here very, very quickly.
We're all going to have an office.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so Melinda accepts. Is there anyone?
I second.
Well, I think we have to get the whole slate.
Oh, okay. Then we
if I'm not
vote.
mistaken.
Okay,
I guess I could have asked someone. Is there any other nominations for chair? I'm guessing there won't be, but hearing none, there's only one nomination, and I did get a second from Craig for Melinda as chair. And all those in favor? I think, Dave, you can't vote. So all those in favor represent by raising their hands. Melinda, are you going to decline?
Do I vote for myself? I mean, that's just a bizarre.
Yeah,
Outside of camera range.
All right. So we have 3 in support and no one against. Melinda, you are now our illustrious leader. So technically, I get to turn over the rest of the appointments to you.
Oh, is that how that works?
This is how it works. You get to act immediately.
The job
Okay.
right away.
Well then, so the next position to fill is the vice chair position. And the vice chair position, while I'm not entirely sure with this organization or with this entity, for many organizations, the vice chair is the best seat to hold because, you know, very, very little responsibility typically falls to the vice chair other than fulfilling the role of the chair in their absence. No note taking is required. Are there nominations for that vice chair position? Although we could actually switch things up and have the vice chair be the heavy hitter here with responsibility.
Who's, so there are 2. So David
Jeff-
cannot have an office.
Right, Jeff, Matt, Mark, and yourself.
Oh, so it's Jeff, Mark, and I.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're the 3 last ones.
I'd like to nominate Craig Pepper as the vice chair.
Okay, well, that sounds great.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second that.
Okay, are there, I should have asked, are there any other nominations from the floor? Hearing none, we have a motion for Craig to serve as the vice chair. We have a second by Jeff. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Okay, for ourselves.
1, 2, 3.
Any opposition? Okay, congratulations.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair.
And then the position that really does require a good amount of work is the secretary's position. Do we have a nomination for our secretary, our official note taker?
Is there someone that would really like that job?
That would make it easier.
Or is willing, yeah.
Jeff looks like he's thinking about it really a lot there.
Well, I think that's something I can handle. If you're new to historic preservation. Okay, I'll
There you
I'll
go.
sign up for it.
Okay, so we have an initial nomination of Jeff for the secretary's position. Are there any other nominations?
Did Dave
Okay.
make that motion?
Dave did make
Yeah,
that motion.
I kind of alluded, but formally, yes, I'd like to nominate Jeff for the secretary position.
Hearing no further nominations, do we have a second for Dave's motion?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Craig. So then all in favor, please raise your hand, signify by aye.
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 All right. Any opposed? Okay. So we've got our 3 positions filled. Well done, folks.
Go. We're cooking.
Yeah, we're blazing through this.
So then looking at the agenda, Kathy, that you prepared, we have our grant announcements and timeline. Did you want to cover that? Do you want me to? Where do we go from here with the agenda?
Yeah, so I was putting together just some what's our next step. We have essentially the second, or B and C are all one and the same. We have been awarded, and I think we all got the announcement, our CLG grant that was pending our CLG status, and we have been accepted by the National Park Service as the next certified local government. That really sets the stage for our marching orders. We got a grant in conjunction with that. And the grant outlines a number of tasks that we need to work on. And so I was plugging very furiously right before this meeting, plugging that into a timeline and schedule, just so we stay on task for the CLG requirements. And then last week, we were officially notified. I don't know if it was officially, but Bill tends to send us, I think it has been made official, that we did get our Keystone Preservation Grant.
Oh, right.
Which is fantastic. And that grant was, the purpose of that grant was to help develop a comprehensive preservation plan for the city. So the wonderful news of these grants means that everyone's workload on this committee just got a lot bigger. So we have grant requirements to work on. So what I'm going to do is,
Kathy, I'm trying to write the notes here. So can I just clarify that the CLG status was confirmed, right?
yes.
Okay, and there was a grant associated with that, or was the Keystone grant that was a separate? There's two grants.
There's two grants.
Okay, so the first one is one related to the CLG status.
Yep. So it's a CLG grant.
Okay, and what is,
And so go ahead.
and so you're going to explain to us what that entails, what we get, how much money we get, and what we have to do, right?
I am, as soon as I get this page.
Yeah.
While you're doing that, CLG stands for
Certified
Local Grant.
Government. CLG. So we are now
Okay,
in the CLG
certified.
program.
Certified.
And
And in addition to that, there was a Keystone
preservation grant.
Preservation grant.
And that's from VHMC, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I'm really struggling to try to get this.
And who gave us the grant for the CLG? Is that a federal agency?
It goes through it goes through SHPO.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm really struggling trying to get this thing zoomed in. 1 second. It's really hard to do this and then see it. Okay. Can everyone see my screen now? Do you see a table?
Yes.
I see it.
Okay. All right, here it is. It's much easier when you. So what I was trying to do to help with this conversation around a work plan is start with ones that we absolutely know we have to work on, which is tied to both of the grants. And so I started and I pulled together, this may not be completely accurate, but it's pretty close. I pulled together the requirements, and within this year, 2021, what we said we would do with both grants. So the first couple of lines, and this is June, starting in June, because that's today, all the way through December 2021. And then the Keystone Preservation Grant, there's not really a lot that we have to do except secure the matching dollars this year. And then I have other down here for discussion points that HRC members would like to add to our work plan. So with that might help explain really what's on the agenda. Does that make sense, Melinda?
It does.
Okay. So there's not a ton of discussion around this. I do have some questions and would like to get some feedback from the commission on some of these points. So the major, 5 or 6 tasks that have to be performed under the CLG grant this year is first and foremost, that grant was designed to help pay for a preservation planner who you will then see at these meetings. And then he or she, once they are onboarded with the city of Erie, will be the person who's working directly on all the initiatives that
Okay.
HRC wants.
So they're like the executive director of the.
Sure, yeah,
CLG.
they're the staff support for the work.
Mhm.
And then administered and managed by in the planning department, so in my department.
Okay.
The The master agreement under June, bullet point 1, master agreement, that is something that I need to get signed and sent out. That's not really nothing that the HRC members need to concern themselves with, but it's really this planner position. I have just taken it upon myself to put together a rough job description. I sent it to Bill Callahan just to get his opinion from SHPO. And then after I get it back from him, any points, what I think I will do then, given your direction, is just share it with the HRC members, and you guys, all of you can give me your feedback, and we get that finalized, posted, and hopefully get some good applicants coming in. Is there any discussion on that? Does that seem like the next logical step? Is everyone would like to see it, give some comments? I don't know that we officially have to adopt the job description as part of an official regular meeting, but as long as I get your feedback, and unless there's any significant issues with the job description, I just move forward with that.
Kathy, I do have a question on that. It's since this person is going to work under you, so you would just make the selection. Does the board have any review of that, or is that just you would recommend and we would just approve?
I didn't put it in here, but there was actually a hiring committee of the HRC that was part of the narrative of that grant. So I would suspect that we have a small committee, and perhaps we could add that as part of our discussion today, who would like to be on that committee. It really is going to, I think, technically be 2 people. I don't know. I'm trying to think if we can even have a quorum without having a regular meeting, because there will be deliberation as to qualifications. So there is that aspect. So you can just give me some guidance. What do you feel like? How do you want to handle that? If we want to do a committee, I think keeping it to 2 people from the HRC would be the easiest, and then we don't have to worry about sunshine laws. But we could certainly share all of the resumes with everyone. I don't have an issue with that at all. How would you like to handle that?
Yeah, my 2 cents would be just to have 2 people review and make a recommendation, and then we just kind of review them all as background. But make a recommendation to the group, then we would just approve. That would be my opinion.
Do we have like any criteria, like they need to be an architect or something?
I'll share the job description.
Okay.
Like I said, that hasn't quite been sure. It's in rough draft right now. So I want to get Bill's input, and then I'll share it with the board. And then we can.
Kathy, who is reviewing that? Bill, what is his name?
Oh, I'm sorry, Bill Callahan. Well, so many of us know him. He's the Western, what is his official title? Western representative for SHPO.
That's probably a community preservation coordinator.
Yeah, for the Western
For
division,
West.
Western region. And he's Jeff. He's been guiding us well for many, many years, but most recently the task force. He was on the task force, so he's our kind of our go-to guy.
I remember him on one of the calls and even on the video thing at Perry Square. So
Yeah, he was. So I'll share that job description with everyone, and then if we just want to, who would like to be our 2 committee members. And I think Dave, for the most part, if you want to be one of those committee members, since there won't be any decisions necessarily made, you as a city council person will be making the final decision because this is an employee. I don't think that there's an issue with you serving on that committee and providing guidance unless you feel otherwise.
If someone else step up, that'd be fine with me, since I'm already going to be approving it in council. If anyone else wants to step up, that's fine.
I'd be happy to be part of that committee, but I don't, obviously I don't want to over volunteer if there are other members of the HRC that are interested in participating in that hiring process. And if no one else does jump up, again, I'm happy to be one of those 2 people.
I'd be happy to do it.
Mark.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to nominate Mark, even though it doesn't require a nomination.
Okay, so unless there's any objections, Mark and Melinda will be our review committee. So they'll sit in on the interviews. And I think every board member should probably give us some feedback on who they think the best candidates are once we have their resumes.
Yeah.
Okay,
So just for the record, we have formed a committee of two that is the Personnel Committee for the Historic Review Commission.
Yes.
yes, much better term,
Well,
Personnel Committee.
somebody said that before. I didn't think of it myself.
Oh.
How much were those grants?
The grants, Craig asked how much the grants were. Each were $25,000.
Great.
So the CLG, we already have internal match. And then the Keystone, we will need to secure matching funds.
Mhm.
And we do have a little bit of time to do that. So I haven't mentioned it, but it's on the list here. So we'll
Okay.
talk about that. Okay, so I think we have a good process in place for the preservation planner, and hopefully it goes as smoothly as I have thought it will, given the schedule. And everyone should be seeing it. I like to keep the Google Drive as our working folder. Is everyone able to access the Google Drive? I know, Melinda, I'm not as familiar. I need to make it shareable, I think, so you guys can post your own information there.
Yeah, that's the only thing that I noted, is that we don't have permissions to edit.
Edit, yeah, so I can change that. But Mark, Jeff, Dave, Jason, has everyone had an opportunity to get into the Google Drive? Or you feel comfortable with it? Is
I
that,
haven't done that yet.
I can show you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with it.
Yes, I've been in there. I won't say I'm comfortable with it, but I've been in there.
And Mark, are you able to access it yet?
I
Okay,
figured it out.
well, that is where I will start posting the job descriptions and then resumes, and so we don't have all these copies sort of floating around in emails. All right, hopefully this week I'll have something for you to look at. Then there was a significant part of our grant, and once the planner is hired, again, they're going to be the staff support to do a lot of this work with the guidance of the HRC. But it is something that I wanted to make sure we talked about a communication strategy, particularly due to the success of, I think, how the task force operated. It was clear for us that, and then this is a very new venture for the city, and there was some, but not a lot, some political or public concern with what this meant. We thought a very direct effort to communicate the work is critical. It's not something we really do a lot with some of our other boards and commissions. So this is something new, is to develop a communication strategy around this work. So we'll have the meetings, which will be public. We'll post agendas and minutes. But we had talked about providing updates to council and the mayor. In our grant, we said every month. I'm not sure that that's going to be as necessary. So we might want to change that to something on a quarterly basis. But any other ideas around how to best communicate, educate the public on the work that the HRC is doing? I didn't have
my concern since the very beginning here is about getting the message out to the public and getting them to understand, buy-in. Dave and I had a conversation about this when we were down in Perry Square, about somebody comes up to me and says, well, I understand that the city is going to try and, tell me what I can do with my house or my property. I think we need to get them on our side before people start thinking that somehow we're usurping their authority. So I think communication through a number of sources is going to be critical to so there's not resistance and people support it.
Anyone have an idea around what that looks like? And I know Preservation Erie, you might have a sort of a strategy that you found works well for you. it's interesting. So some of the things that we have available to us to get information out is, of course, the city's website, which needs some work. It's a little hard to maneuver. It's not as user-friendly, but it does provide at least a spot to qualify that our documents are public. So agendas and minutes work well there. We do have lots of social media outlets. So we have Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, city's Facebook page. And then they also are able to send out information on Nextdoor, all the Nextdoor apps, which there's a significant number of neighborhoods that use Nextdoor. So we can push content out. It's the development of that content, what it looks like and how often you want to do that, I think needs to be figured out sooner than later. So we're not reacting to things. It's much more targeted and dedicated. We know, well, after this meeting, we want to do X, Y, and Z, and we already have a system in place by which that can occur.
When I read the report to City Council just the other day, it mentioned there that you had already had a discussion with a lot of the existing neighborhood organizations. How did all those discussions go? Was it a one-time thing, or is there like you have a continuing meeting with them? They seem to be people who are already interested in pushing historic preservation, which means if we get them on board with us, they may help spread the word out.
That's a
Other
great
people
question.
below them.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something I should have mentioned and it slipped my mind. We also have access to advisory boards and councils. Of course, Planning Commission is a great way to get information out, get feedback. But there's the Erie Neighborhood Growth Partnership is a nonprofit that's associated with the Redevelopment Authority, but all of the active neighborhood groups sit on that. So if you really want, they meet on a monthly basis. So that's a great group. And so that's our West Bayfront, Bayfront East Side Task Force, Sisters of St. Joseph, East and West Side, Center City is on there, as well as East Side Grassroots Coalition, Academy, Survey. I think that's about it. So, but that's a great group.
And what was that group? What was the official name of that group again?
The Erie Neighborhood Growth Partnership. The city also has advisory councils, and they represent different, around different issues. We have the LGBTQ plus advisory council, the disability roundtable, the New American and Immigrant Advisory Council, the Mayor's Business Council.
How extensive was your discussions with the Neighborhood Growth Partnership? I mean, you apparently already have a relationship with them. They meet on a monthly basis. Are they expecting updates from the Historic Review Commission?
Probably, yes. I think the one meetings we had, Melinda, you can speak to that because I think it was the one you attended with Melissa.
Yeah, so when we met with that group, we specifically talked with them about this idea about creating a neighborhood preservation toolkit, right? To create a toolkit, and I'm using the phrase toolkit or the word toolkit loosely because we had kind of looked at a model in Philadelphia that had put together a toolkit that was ultimately a publication. And the reason I want to be cautious about using the word toolkit is because we may or may not decide that a publication is what's best for Erie's neighborhoods. In any case, putting together some type of resource for our neighborhood groups to work with to help property owners, whether they be residential property owners or commercial property owners, putting together resources that would help them point them in the right direction and or provide them with some guidance. So when we met with them, all of the executive directors that were present, or the representatives from the various neighborhood groups that were present, were very supportive of this, because when you look at historic preservation, most folks who own old homes value their old home. They may not necessarily see it as historic in the sense that, it in itself is historically relevant with regards to the history of the city of Erie, but it is important to the neighborhood, whether we're looking at a single residence or a grouping of residences or a neighborhood corner store, right? These are places that are important to the neighborhood. So when we talk about historic preservation, I think most folks really do want to see their neighborhoods maintained. And so that at least at that level, they're appreciative and supportive of historic preservation. So that's really the kind of conversation that we had with all of these executive directors, was really, again, kind of creating some resources or a single resource that could be used as they're working with their own neighborhoods on preservation issues. So everyone was supportive. And when you dig into that, if you were to dig into the toolkit that we looked at as a model project, which was the one out of Philadelphia, it provided information on how to research the history of your house. It provided information on the National Register. What is the criteria for a property to be listed on the National Register? How do you make good decisions with regards to home improvement projects, specifically on the exterior of your home? So a lot of different information was shared through that toolkit. So, and folks, yeah.
Those are all really positive things.
Yes.
I mean, how could anybody fear that?
Right.
Well, I think, to Melinda's point, that people who have old houses value the old houses. But I'm just concerned that we're going to get some people that don't want the state sticking their nose into their business, telling me what I can do with my house. So better to try and get them on our side now than before they get up in arms over it, right? Explain to them why we're doing it. I think one of the things on the report to City Council was you wanted to do or to create at least one historic district. And is that the downtown area? Are those people on board with that? Because it has costs associated with it, obviously.
So that would be a process all in itself. So we have not, because this HRC is a brand new entity, we have yet as a group to really talk about what that process looks like, what it looks like to actually create a historic district for the city of Erie or within the city of Erie.
But that area of the downtown, there is no existing neighborhood group there, is that correct?
In the downtown,
Go ahead.
where, Jeff, are you suggesting the Lower State Street district that we had earlier talked about?
Because I see they did a pilot plan with the survey. We go out and gather the information on the building. So I'm assuming that's the area would target would be the Lower State Street area, would be the first area we go for historic district. I'm just wondering if there's a group already there, or we essentially, if that's the area we want to target for our first historic district, who do we start talking to try and get them on our side?
I would suggest that we first develop the procedure by which we would accept and designate local districts first before we go out and talk to people. That one was discussed. We've also discussed other areas. I mean, I'm sure we all know of really unique special places that we think would be great candidates for an historic district. There's someone on this HRC that has maybe even thought about one for around his building, but I think first we get some policy around it. So when we're out talking to people, they'll say, well, what is the process like? What happens? What's regulated? What's not? And then go from there. So we have a little bit more talking, some more talking points. And it's too early, and if people are watching, I don't want anyone to think that, they're targeting my property already, and that certainly was not the case. There's a little history around the Lower State Street district that we spent some time exploring, and we have talked to some property owners. The task force members talked to some property owners, but nothing set in stone yet, Jeff. No.
And Kathy, I wanted to add also I think there's a big education process here. We need to tell people, why we're even doing this, why it's part of our plan. It isn't to, do maybe what certain people think about taking over properties, but it's really to, better our city, better neighborhood. So there's a lot of different aspects to it. So I guess what I'm saying is education is a big part of that, and kind of getting all the policies and everything in order first before we even have that approach. So I think it's definitely a multi-step process. And because we've never done it before in Erie, we need to be careful about that, as we move forward through that. I was also going to mention also what, Jeff, I know you mentioned the word historic district. It's actually historic overlay district, because we do have historic districts in the Erie already. They're designated, but what we're talking about here is historic overlay district that would be in the zoning ordinance. I just want to be clear on the terminology.
Just to get the terminology straight in my mind, the existing historic district, that's through the National Register of Historic Places?
Correct.
Okay.
And what we would have in a city, what we're talking about is historic overlay district, that would actually be regulated in zoning, which none exists at the moment.
Correct. And so we would refer to those as locally regulated districts too. So in other areas that don't do it through their zoning, they would do it through a separate standalone ordinance, but it would all function very similar.
But you can be both.
You can be both.
Right. Okay.
And you can be one and not the other. So you can be a locally regulated district and not necessarily be a National Register district.
Okay. So right now, what we're talking about in the historic overlay district means essentially you're taking a zoning map and boxing out an area and say this becomes our first historic overlay district.
Yeah, and that can also be applied to not a larger geographic area with multiple properties. It could be a single property that could have that overlays applied to it.
Okay.
So it's both.
Well,
So
I think I agree with Dave. Education is important, and I see farther down in your list of tasks, right? You have policies and procedures, and I was reading a bunch of the stuff, kind of underlining, well, we have to do this, we have to make this policy, we have to make this policy. And I also read the Philadelphia one, and it seems like they're a much larger city, but a lot of what they have, we could incorporate if that's permitted by them.
Kathy, I was also going to say, back to your original question about the communication strategy, no matter what, we're not going to catch a lot of people. There's always going to be someone who's missing it, no matter how many Facebook posts or social media posts we have. So I don't know quite what the approach is, just to kind of, do a lot of the things we're talking about, but definitely a strategy is important. I know I've mentioned this to Kevin Flowers, and in there, I think the way the paper kind of runs now, there's, I would like to see some type of discussion in the media about it to really try to get it out there. Maybe it's an op-ed or whatever, but I know I've mentioned it before, and I think you've talked to the media to try to get it out there and kind of give them the basic introduction about where we're going to go. So hopefully people get interested and kind of know the goals right from the beginning, instead of looking for things that they may not like going forward.
If I could, sometimes when we have an issue with building stuff here at our building, when you talk to the code people, it's almost like a terrifying experience because they're not really a resource. They're an enforcer. And I think that if we approach this project more like what I was hearing, like this is a resource that we have, we're going to help you with the process.
Mhm.
I wish I could call code enforcement and show them a problem I have and say, hey, how should I handle this? And instead, you're terrified to call them over least they create a lot of litigation. So, the less you talk to them, the better. So I would hope that if we're going to try to win hearts and minds, we should be more of a resource oriented. Of course, there's going to be teeth to it as well. But if we stress the teeth, I think we'll lose the public's heart.
Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I was just reading one of and maybe it was the Philadelphia preservation plan. I wrote it down because it says we have the right to determine it as a historic district, whether the owner agrees to it or not. And as soon as you see that, then you could just see people starting to get up in arms. So that's not getting them on our side. So we want to make sure that we approach it, like Mark said, we're on their side.
Right. And here's these resources that we can help you to study your property and help you out with, if you needed assistance and possibly even finances to do something wonderful with your old house, that would be great. And kind of lead with that as opposed to a legislative body.
Right. But I think in those areas that already have neighborhood associations, they're the primary, because they're already thinking about it, right? It's not new to them. Their mindset is already to evaluate historic preservation. Yes.
You want to work with them.
Yes. And they can help communicate it to their members.
So some of the steps that we'll be going through, you'll see the first one is actually creating a city resource by creating a planner position. So when you do have a question, there's someone at City Hall you can call.
Perfect.
And then that person then is connected to everyone here as a resource. So you're the advisors and the decision makers in some respect. Appointed by council, and the preservation planner is the conduit by which it happens. One of the main reasons that we immediately and quickly not immediately, it took us 2 years, but it takes time, applied for CLG status is so we could then apply for grants that are just available for CLG communities and that are almost, as far as much as I know of CLG grants, they're tied to help bringing resources, like Mark just said, to communities. So helping with a lot of different things. So the planner's job is to go after that funding as much as possible and bring it down to the community, and then also build other programs along with the HRC, of course. So, okay, well, I think I really just from the communication strategy standpoint, I just wanted to kind of get everyone's head around how we might do that effectively and within the resources that we have today. So the resource is a little challenging. It's volunteers on this call and me. But let's be thinking about it now so we're not trying to play catch up. Which would be great. And I think getting to ENGP, I feel like July is the time that we need to have something to announce. We've got grants, we'll potentially have a preservation planner, and that would be a great time to hold multiple sessions with council, ENGP, or some of our advisory boards, the planning commission, on what happens next. So that might be a good time to reach out to Erie Times News and also get them. There's probably going to be a press conference in two weeks or so we can start announcing everything. But I think much more targeted outreach would be better in July. So we'll plan on that. And then, of course, as part of the CLG grant, the policies and procedures that we just talked about, what's the process, what's the application look like, what's the fee associated with the application, we'll be working on that next month. So once I make the Google Drive shareable, if people want to start putting in models that they like, remember that this is connected to our zoning ordinance. So finding models out there that it's not necessarily exclusive. There might be some applications that would be applicable whether from other communities, whether or not it's in their zoning ordinance or not. But just be mindful of that as you're out searching for great examples, which is really where we're at with that. And then there's a 3-year plan for preservation. I think that was, Melinda, you might need to help me jog my memory. Was that in case we didn't get the funding to do a full-blown preservation plan? I'm not exactly sure what all of our thoughts were, because Melinda was the key to these 2 grants. You're muted.
That's one and the same, Kathy. So these 2 grants actually build off of one another. So when you look at, so the first grant, which was the CLG grant in the amount of $25,000, that funds the position, the preservation planner position. Well, what will that preservation planner be working on in the time frame that they are being funded? Well, they will work on developing the policies and procedures for the CLG. They will work on the development of this preservation plan. And we had also written into that the beginning work on the toolkit, as well as the methodology for the survey. Let's not forget that additional component, which was the methodology for the citywide survey that the State Historic Preservation Office has been requesting. So then building on that, then the second grant is the PHMC Keystone Historic Preservation Planning Grant. That's $25,000. That specifically supports, or is to be used to support work on that preservation plan.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Melinda, is this a full-time job or is this a part-time job?
We budgeted it for full-time. We budgeted it for full-time, and if I recall correctly, was it like 53?
No, it would have been in the 40s, like the salary. It was
Well,
40.
I think everything.
Everything, yeah.
Like the full cost of the position, I thought we budgeted for around 53.
It could be. I don't quite remember that, but it was for full-time, Mark, because we thought that we got a lot of catching up to do. So
His only duties are related to historic preservation.
Correct.
He's not going to inherit 5 other duties.
no, but they're going to be working very closely with our blight and demolition coordinator, because those 2 go hand in hand. I mean, when we see the blighted property list, those are almost always older buildings. So there's a synergy that needs to occur, which I think is important. That it's nice that both those positions will sit in the same department. So you might see some overlap with helping in a positive way with blighted properties, and hopefully getting those into rehabable situations. But that's the only thing that I think might be an overlap. They're going to be, primarily working on preservation, very specific preservation programming, and writing grants and trying to get more resources very quickly. Failure is not an option. Because if it does fail, then the position's no longer needed in City Hall. So that's the way we've looked at it, Mark.
Okay.
I know the way it worked at GE. You didn't get a new job, you got another job. Whatever you had, they just dumped on more responsibilities.
Yeah.
But if this person is strictly hired to do historic preservation, then he can focus on that and not be pulled 5 other ways.
There is more than enough work with regards to historic preservation in the city for a full-time position.
Yeah, I agree. We've got so much catching up to do. Everything like developing policies, procedures. I barely had time to throw this.
So
really
go back to
beautiful-
the policies and procedures. How much are we allowed to copy paste from places like Philadelphia?
All of it. There is, unless you see a little copyright somewhere, we can copy it and paste, and that's, I mean, that's how the magic is done in my world.
All right, well, that's good, because that's, they've done a lot of work, and there's no sense in us
Yeah.
running the wheel.
No, we'll make it
Great
as-
ones in Pittsburgh too.
Pittsburgh, we have a
Yeah.
couple of
Yeah.
Pittsburgh models. We have some smaller communities that are really cutting edge that work well. So I'll throw those into the Google Drive, the ones that we have already. But feel free to look at the other ones that we have, or other areas that you like.
So how do you see that going forward? You said in July, we'll be working on policies and procedures. Do you want to go into our next meeting having a whole bunch of sample documents, or how do you see that happening?
And I hadn't given it that much thought. Just wanted to make sure it was on our radar.
Sure.
You did give me some, am I muted? No, okay. Just give me some direction.
Well, I'm thinking if we can go through other cities and other states, I was looking at the Boston one, and get a lot of what I read kind of covers the same ground, right? So I don't think there's anything completely different out there. So I think those are the kind of things that would be easy to just cut and paste and say, here, this starts some of our policies. Or I made a list of things in there of things that policies in the zoning ordinance that we have to do, that we can also say, all right, we need a policy for this, we need a policy for this, and then just get it from other cities. And if it seems to the commission that it's good, I think we need to put a lot more effort into it, right? Somebody already did that.
Yeah. So there's two things that will come out of this. One will be something that must be approved by legislatively approved. So any that would require an ordinance. There may be some changes we need to tweak to our zoning ordinance through this work, but most of it I think is going to be our own internal processes. But there may be some, so we can just establish and approve our own policies. But there may be some that we realize, oh, this really needs to be part of the ordinance, and we have to go through an ordinance amendment, which Jason is on here from our planning commission. That would be the process by which we amend the zoning ordinance. That does take some time, just because it's a change to the zoning, but just keep that in mind as well. And I'll be very mindful of picking out those two as well. Well, something that's an internal document. Go ahead, Jeff.
Melinda's the boss, but I would be willing to go through what I've done with the zoning code and make a list of things I think we need policy with, and then just including with the meeting minutes. And if people want to start doing the research and say, here's some things that answers those questions. Then by the time we get to July, I mean, we've already done a lot of our homework and got some sample policies that we can read and update as we think necessary.
I don't hear any objections, Melinda.
So no, what I was going to say next is that I think kind of identifying yes. So Jeff, what you just said, kind of identifying the policies that we need, policies and or procedures that we need in place sooner rather than later would be important to identify, and collecting those sample documents. What I would advise us not to do is to create anything without having the preservation planner position filled, because I almost think that the writing or formalization of any policies or procedures, I mean, we're at the beginning of this, right? The HRC has just begun. We don't have anything in writing. We're just about the city is just about to hire a preservation planner. It feels like we're at kind of a really important moment, and rather than create or formalize documents before having that preservation planner on board, I think would be the wrong decision. I think that kind of identifying what's most important, collecting those sample documents is good, but I don't think that we'll want to formalize anything until we have the preservation planner on board to really help navigate the process. Because to be honest, I would hope that whomever is chosen to fill that preservation planner position, they will have experience administering CLGs. I would hope. And so bringing that practical work experience into that position will help us. So yes, so again, Jeff, I think your idea is great, right? Identify what we probably will need sooner than later and gather sample documents. But again, I think we should really onboard the preservation planner before we get too far down the road.
I agree. He's going to own it. So, he should be part of the decision making.
Or she.
Yeah, really, why are we so sure it'll be a he?
Just teasing, I know, it's just easier to say that. Okay, then just continuing down this list, we added the survey methodology. I'm not sure where that fits in the timeline, but at least it's in there. And I'll update this when we're done and put it into our Google Drive. Just so you know, if you haven't opened it yet, this is the narratives out of the 2 grants that basically feeds into the schedule. So you know, so you'll have it available. And it's not formatted very pretty. I did a cut and paste and tried to get them all in the same text, font size and things. But other than that, it is what it is. Keystone Grant, there's really not much we need to do except start securing matching funds in August. This was, I believe we were looking at a Helping Today grant, Melinda, as the match for that. So that's why I think their next round will open in August.
Which grant is that?
The Erie Community Foundation's Helping Today grant.
Okay, great.
Doesn't mean that we'll get it or we'll get it fully funded, but that would be the grant.
A good one to go for.
A good one to go for. Since nonprofits are eligible, Erie or Preservation Erie has offered to be the sponsor, the fiscal sponsor to get the match. So we would work with them. And that doesn't start, if it's awarded, until the end of 2021. So we do have some time to get all this other stuff in place before we undertake the preservation plan. So I don't think there's much to say about this. We'll want to talk about it in July with Preservation Erie and get the, just to remind ourselves that grant needs to be written and submitted.
Just for the record, did you say the Erie Community Foundation has been approached for matching funds, or are you going to do that?
We'll apply. Working with Preservation Erie as our partner, we would apply to the Helping Today grant program, which doesn't open until August.
Cool. Okay. All right. So you haven't done that yet.
Correct. I don't think, Melinda, you didn't talk to them, have you? You're just familiar with them.
No, I did not. And honestly, so the Keystone grant officially doesn't typically begin until either the end or beginning of September. So we can pursue the Community Foundation grant during their next cycle. We could also wait, knowing that the Erie Community Foundation has quarterly grant cycles, right? So let's time it in such a way that it makes sense, and that might be the next cycle. I'm not saying that, but. And just reiterating that the Keystone grant develop, right? That 25,000 is for the citywide preservation plan. It is the same. That is the same as the 3-year preservation plan up in the first grant. Just again, repeating that. Those are the same plans we're talking about.
Okay. But you said the 25,000 from the Keystone grant actually isn't available to us till September?
Correct.
You don't see the money till September. Okay.
Correct. And that actually is a reimbursement grant program. So as the city implements that project and expends funds, then it will submit reimbursement requests to PHMC.
Okay. I know we're getting, we're at our hour, but I did want to make sure that there was time to discuss other action items that the that the HRC members would like to include as part of the work plan for 2021. And this is basically, what do you want to do this year? It's not like, or the rest of this year. We'll do this again in January for the coming year. But if there's anything else that you want to work on, it's also a good idea if we think that there's going to be a cost associated with it, that we put a budget together and at least ask for it in our annual budget. And we don't have to make this decision today, but be thinking of it, and, others who say, hey, I really think this is an important piece of the work, feel free, and we can add it and talk about it later and look at this work schedule every.
Should we all be sort of focusing on different neighborhoods for our first overlay district?
Okay, so you're thinking, look at like local district identification?
Right.
I'm just gonna plug it
Because
up
don't we
here.
kind of have to have that to implement any policy that we would create?
Sure. So I would put, this is June, so July, we would want to be identifying potential districts. I'm gonna try to do this.
But I think we want to meet with those groups and maybe talk about before we designate it as a possibility, I guess. I hate to say, here's a possibility, and then that group says, well, did you even talk to us about that? So I think that's that communication is going to be important.
Okay, so we meet with the NGP. The downtown partnership also sits on the ENGP, so we do have the downtown represented.
Now, when they meet how often?
Once a month.
Okay, and so they're all in one place and all these people come, and although now it's all been virtual, but.
Correct. So there's not, we don't have hundreds. You have representatives each.
It's like what, about 10 or 12 organizations?
Yeah.
Mark. I'm gonna mute Mark because I think he's gonna be loud. Okay, so in July, we can plan to do that, and that would kick off the time. I think they're probably I think their schedule, when are they meeting?
So you're saying that that some of the members of the, what is it, the neighborhood, what's it called? Here? The Erie Neighborhood Growth Partnership. Some of their attendees may have some really good candidates for this. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Cool. Okay.
Actually, they meet this week, so it would be a little hard to get this turned around. So they meet the same week, so we could meet in July and then that following Thursday be on their agenda to have that discussion with them. And we can prime it. We would prime something so they could be thinking about it. I know, well, Melinda, you were on that call too, but I know there's been a couple of neighborhood groups who have sort of self-identified areas of interest in their neighborhoods. So.
Oh, that's good. That would be the best, if they're coming to us.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, and if we had a couple of them that were coming to us and wanted it, then I think that would be a great start.
And that's also why really figuring out the designation process is important, because I think if there are groups that self-identify, the next question then is, well, what's next? How do we go about the designation process?
Right.
Or how do we go about completing that designation process?
It'd be nice to have some type of one pager kind of defining an overlay district and kind of what it means in general, so that people have an understanding, because some people may not even have any idea what it means. Maybe we could have a basic description about what it is, maybe even available on our meeting minutes or something.
Did I hear you say that, like in the case of a already existing national registered district, that rather, if you didn't initially attack the entire district, you're saying individual buildings in that district can be,
That's correct.
get our overlay.
Yes.
Okay, okay. Well, that's good.
I think it's HRP district. I think it's the HRP overlays. We were changing that quite a bit. I think it's historic resource protection.
Is what the overlay is called.
Uh-huh.
It's not called our name. It's not called the review commission. Okay.
I believe it's HRP, if
Okay.
I'm recalling it right.
Historic what? Repair-
Resource protection?
Resource, okay.
Jason,
Resource.
you should remember that. You've heard those discussions.
Historic Resource Protection Overlay District. So that's that's what we would be offering
Yeah.
people. Okay. Or places.
So one pager, I can work on that this month. And then are we still?
Let's think about though, when we say a policy, they're not going to be the formal policy because it said we're not going to have that until after we hire the planner. But we can give
I'm just
them,
thinking an
like, they-
informational.
one page. This is
One
kind of,
page.
yeah.
Yeah,
kind
just
of
an informational
introduce the
piece to
idea,
say,
so.
yeah, just to say in general what it is so that no one, so people who've never heard of it at least have an understanding. It's not going to be, here's our policy for what we're going to do in Erie. It's in general, information sheet so someone could understand in general what it is.
Mhm.
And they got it in writing and.
I think
it's
that's
not
a real
word
good
of mouth
idea.
thing.
Okay.
Before they oppose it, we got to make sure and tell them what it's about. So I'm just kidding. That's what I'm saying is I think education is an important part of this, and that's what we're here mostly to do because we want to come up with a preservation plan, but we need to educate and tell people what these community plans are before we would ever implement them.
Yeah, I mean, there is a population of people that it doesn't matter what you're bringing them. If government has anything to do with it, they are very untrusting and leery and blah, 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 blah. So I get that. But
Absolutely, I agree with Dave. We're better off to give them our position first, so we're not starting.
right,
We have
so
to
that we
change their
don't get
mind.
defined by them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, anything else we want to add? It's a pretty good list and I'll bring this up at every meeting so we can change it. So we'll show progress, anything that's delayed, and then add other things, other tasks, just as a way to kind of manage the work for us and then eventually the preservation planner. Anything else you want to? Go
It
ahead.
would be nice to have, again, I'm spurting out ideas here, but I know we're gonna have a web page on the City of Erie website. Maybe we have a resources section so we could refer to locations of either these, a Q&A, or we refer to Preservation Area, we refer to Erie Historical Society, whatever the resource may be. Maybe we could develop that as a possible a subsection.
Let's shoot for July on that one, just to give us some time.
Okay. Great.
Okay. Anything else? Like I said, doesn't end it. We'll bring it back up again.
Here's another thought, Kathy. I think we talked about this before in task force, but maybe to again bring this attention to the community. Maybe we could bring in a speaker. I don't know if there's funding available to bring in historic preservation speakers that would be of a certain caliber that could maybe come and give a presentation, possibly. I know as Preservation we've done that in the past, and other groups have done that. Historical Society. I wonder if that might be something that where there'd be funding available, or maybe even we could ask for assistance. I'm just trying to bring attention to preservation and the importance of it to communities, not to talk about rules or anything, but just to talk about different parts of what historic preservation is and how it's helping communities, not trying to regulate them.
What's the schedule for Preservation Erie? Do you do that? Or are you planning on having webinars, workshops, or anything?
Do so We will be doing a series in September. The series in September will be part of our annual Greater Erie Awards. So in September, we'll do a series of speakers on various historic preservation topics. And then we currently have funding to do a series of preservation labs, which will be hands-on, kind of do-it-yourself preservation learning opportunities, which will cover a variety of subjects. So that is tentatively planned for, if not starting the end of this year, definitely starting in January.
Okay, so I'll just plug in the series here. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. So that's, I think I hit it. You said August or September? September, I got it.
So,
Okay, it's in the right one.
Yeah, August, September is for the series of speakers. The actual preservation labs are, I haven't figured out yet if we're going to do that November, December, starting in November, December, and continuing through the end of next September or next summer, or if we'll start in January and continue through the end of summer 2022.
Okay, and does that require, how would we get HRC members involved in that? Is that membership, or what would that look like?
So it depends. If HRC members would like to attend, we can simply make sure that the HRC members receive information on all of those activities. Is that?
Should belong to that.
I didn't know if there was a fee associated with it, there, we need to outline a budget.
Oh, I see where you're going. Yeah, no. We can simply share information when those will be occurring.
Okay, and David, would that satisfy your, at least the educational program for now? I mean, there will be CLG money to do that sort of thing once.
I was just talking in general, just some thoughts for the future.
Okay.
But I do like that idea of going with the carrot first rather than the stick, you know, like putting it forward about how positive this is, you know, what an opportunity this is for everybody, especially if you have 1 or 2 or 3 neighborhood people that are going to ask us to come in first and do that for the first year. And then everybody's, you know, before, you know, take the long view and be successful over time.
And like, you know, so we should try and make it places that are not that dissimilar to us. I mean, Buffalo has had such an amazing success story with their preservation efforts, and you know, and of course Philadelphia has too. But you know, Philadelphia is such a different animal than us. You know, I would just think if we could draw on Buffalo, Pittsburgh, you know, places that are in our region, you know, have the same wretched weather and everything else, and yet, you know, have gotten so much accomplished.
Okay, so I stopped sharing because I think we were at our limit. We've got a full agenda for the next couple months for sure. Unless you want me to bring it back up, but I think that's ends the discussion on the work plan as well, Melinda.
Well, very good. So does that mean, Kathy, are you hinting that we're ready for a motion to adjourn?
It's I put it back into your hands, your good hands, whatever you'd like to do.
Well, in that case, we'll thank everybody for being on for the first HRC meeting, and express appreciation to all, and call for a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion for adjournment.
Motion by Dave. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Craig. All in favor, either raise your hand or say aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? Okay,
All right.
wonderful.
Well, thank you.
Well done.
Thank
I
you.
love it when we can get everything done in an hour.
Thank you. We'll see
Thank
ya.
you, Kathy.
Thanks, everyone.
Well, that's a good rule, because then people don't dread the meeting.